Are you tired of being restricted by your corded router? Has this ever happened to you? Then you need the new cordless half-inch collet 2¼ horsepower 36-volt multi-bolt router from Metabo HPT. It's so easy, even the kids can do it. Just send 25 easy payments of $99.99.
Hey friends, welcome back to the garage. My name is Jim with Philly Fix, and I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to do something a little bit different for the channel. I haven't really done that much woodworking centric content yet, but today we have the Metabo HPT cordless 2¼ horsepower router. It takes half-inch router bits and you don't need to plug it in, and that's what makes it a world's first type of product. There's lots of cordless trim routers out there, but none of this size. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a detailed walk through the specs. We're going to validate some of those specs. I'm going to see if the RPMs are what they say they are. We're going to see how loud it is. We're also going to compare to a popular corded 2¼ horsepower model, the Bosch 1617 EVS. Depending on what kit you buy it in, there's some other letters after the EVS, but it's the 1617. It's very popular, and it just happens to be the one that I own. So we're going to do a comparison. This is not a showdown. I'm not declaring a winner. But if you're considering buying this cordless router, you're probably wondering, well, how does it compare to a corded router? So we're going to do a comparison to see what the benefits are of each and how they compare as far as real-world performance. I've got a selection of bits here. I have a 3/4 inch by 1¼ straight bit. We're going to cut some dados, something you might do if you're building cabinets, cutting a slot to put a piece of plywood in. I've also got a spiral upcut bit. We'll do some cutouts and some different types of wood. We're going to try in some softer pine, some harder red oak, and we're just going to see, what these routers can do, how they compare as you increasingly put more burden on them. Do they start bogging down, stalling, burning the wood, that kind of stuff. There's one other thing I want to say. I am not a professional woodworker, and I wouldn't even consider myself an advanced DIYer when it comes to woodworking. So I want to say thank you to Jonathan from John Ford Woodworks. I'll put his channel up in the card here. I had a great conversation with him the other day talking about what the testing could be. He's going to do a test comparing a 2¼ horsepower corded router like this to a more beefy 3+ horsepower one. We're going to try to do some of the same testing, so you can go watch his video, watch mine, and get an even broader comparison. But please go support him. I really appreciate his assistance and feedback in putting together today's video. But again, I am not a professional woodworker, and I'm not even an advanced DIYer, so I would love your comments below on some other thoughts and things like that. One other thing I do want to say is I always like to disclose if I'm using a tool on video that I didn't buy with my own money. That's the case with this Metabo. It was loaned to me. This is actually Sunday of Memorial Day weekend, and I have to have this thing back by Wednesday. So I'm feverishly trying to get this shot before I have to give it back to the Metabo HPT rep. Same thing as I did with Makita with the drill and Impact. There was no agreement. I'm not under any sort of restrictions, but I do want to let you guys know if I'm testing a tool that I don't have my own money invested in. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. Let's get started. Okay, so first let's take a look at what this tool weighs. I have the 4 amp hour multi-volt battery on here. They also make a 2.5 amp hour battery that might weigh a little bit less, but let's just see what it weighs with the best battery on it. And it looks like we're coming in at 8 pounds and just over 11 ounces for the tool. So this tool is very easy to push down on the plunge motion. Now, one thing I'll note is you see that these rods, they are exposed. So I'm wondering if you're going to get dust buildup on here, kind of like on a sliding miter saw. You can see that the plunge base for the Bosch actually has a rubber or plastic boot so that that plunge mechanism is protected from dust. So only long-term use is going to tell that, but we'll see what it looks like after I do some tests, see if you get a lot of dust, I should say wood dust buildup, sawdust buildup on those sliders. And of course, because it's a Metabo HPT 36 multi-volt tool, you can use the AC adapter. So we will run a test to see if the AC adapter gives it any benefit or if the battery is better. Let's look at the speed adjustment. You've got a rotary dial here that goes from 1 to 6. And this router is rated for 11,000 RPMs at its slowest speed, 25,000 RPMs at its highest speed. I have a laser RPM meter here. I've got it on a little tripod with the clip on to keep it turned on. I've got the laser pointed at the collet, and I've marked the collet with a white paint marker so that it can measure the RPMs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the lowest setting, see how close we are to the rated 11,000 RPMs, and then we'll crank it up to the highest setting and see how close we get to 25,000. All right, we're at about 10,900 on the low end. And we peaked at about 24,530 at the high end. Okay, so let's see what the no load sound level is on this router. I've got my sound meter here. I'm going to hold this up off the jaw horse so that there's no vibration being transmitted directly to the sound meter. And I'd say we're roughly 2 feet away. Maybe we'll go a little closer than that, maybe 18 inches to say roughly the distance from the router and what it would normally be from your ear. Got it all the way up on speed 6 to get the maximum sound level out of it. So let's see what we get. Before I start doing some test routing here, I just want to talk about the trigger action. You've got a safety button up here that you push and it stops about halfway down until you pull the trigger. So you kind of have to push that down, pull the trigger. Now, if you leave it pushed halfway down, you can kind of release the trigger as you want. Once you get it pushed halfway down, you push the trigger in. It allows this safety button to travel the rest of the way down, which locks the trigger on. So the other thing I want to point out is that this is, in a sense, a combination fixed and plunge base router. You actually have a lever here that when you release, it allows you to plunge. And of course, you can limit the travel, the upper limit of travel with these bolts. This is a lot like some drill presses, just something that comes to mind. But when you get it where you want it, you can lock it into place with this lever, and you've got your fixed base. Over here you have your depth gauge. This has like a little plastic indicator on it that moves up and down so you can calibrate it. It's very similar to the Bosch. You loosen this, you get your bit to where it's just touching the workpiece, you lock that in. You can lock on the other side, you lock the plunge base. You set that to 0. So that's your 0 point. And then you can do this and then set, say you want to make a 1-inch depth, which is quite a bit, but let's say it's 1 inch, you do that. And then you get your 1-inch depth. Now, there's also a fixed depth stop here, but if you turn this, it actually gives you 2 adjustable depth stops. So you can actually have 3 different depths preset, and the other 2 presets are configurable. These are just Phillips head screws that you raise or lower, run in, run out to set those depth stops. If you look at the Bosch, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stops precast into this knob, and those are in, I believe, 1/8 inch increments. If I'm wrong, I'll put it on the screen, but it sure looks like 1/8 to me. So this kind of gives you 1/8 inch increments, whereas this one gives you 3, but you can set the other 2 where you want it. So that's just a comparison there. It doesn't give you the same really fine adjustment that your typical fixed base would. So, for example, on the Bosch here, you can use this fine adjustment knob. You can push this in and get your coarse adjustments and then really dial it in here. So you're not going to be able to do that with the Metabo, but you're getting the convenience of a corded router. So that's just one of the trade-offs with this router. The other nice thing is, while the Bosch requires 2 wrenches to change the bit and loosen the collet, this actually has what you would normally see on a circular saw or a miter saw. It's actually a collet stop, and you only need a single wrench to loosen up the collet and put the bit in. So that's kind of nice. So let's try the dust collection hood. This is pretty interesting. This is actually a little hood that sits directly around the router bit. Other companies try to enclose the whole base to collect dust, whereas this sits right around the router. I'm interested to see how that works. Your dust collection hood sits on those screws, and you have these little thumb screw type things tapped in the middle to go with those screws. That's good enough for government work right there. It also comes with your edge guide. Pretty typical setup on the edge guide. You've got a couple holes here for your wing screws, whatever you want to call these, thumb screws. And let's set it up so that I'm routing right around the middle of this board and tighten it down. So there's your edge guide. And this router also came with a lot of template guide accessories in the box. Fully accessorized when you buy this router. It came with kind of a cool bag. I'll show a shot of the bag too. It's got like a green camo thing going on. Here is your wrench to change your bits. So you've got your bits, your collet stop here. Okay. I don't think this is that tight. I can probably do it with my fingers. It does come with a 1/4 inch collet as well. There goes my 1/2 inch collet. So let me get the bit and put it on and we'll get started. Okay, so we have our Bosch 3/4 inch by 1.5 inch straight bit. Okay, so we've got that locked in at approximately 1/8 of an inch. And I've got a piece of 5/4 by 4 inch pine here. I'm probably got about 24 inches before I'm going to hit the end of the jaw horse here. So we're going to do our 3/4 inch by 1/8 inch deep dado cut. This bit is rated for 27,500 RPMs, which is well beyond the maximum RPM that we measured. So we're going to have this set the maximum speed, shouldn't be a problem. Turn on my super fancy dust collection and we'll see how it goes here. So I have my dust collection hose taped on here because it just doesn't want to stick. So it's kind of useless. I'm not going to blame that on the router, but I don't think I'm going to be able to give you guys a good feel for how this dust collection works, unfortunately. But as far as the router itself, it made a nice clean cut. It didn't appear to bog down whatsoever. Very clean and smooth. So now I've got the depth set to a full 1/2 inch. I'm on yet another place on the board. So let's lock it down and let's see how it goes here. All right, again, this trigger lock is a little weird for me. Man, I'm covered in sawdust, but you know, it made this cut really, again, not bogging down. I mean, obviously you could hear there was load on the motor, but I mean, this thing was pretty smooth at a full 1/2 inch depth in this pine here. Okay, so I've got our straight bit, 3/4 inch straight bit on the Bosch router. I have the Bosch router in the fixed base. I'm gonna go right to a 1/4 inch depth of cut on this guy, and we'll see how it goes. Now, one thing you'll notice is that this does not have an electric brake on it, so you have to let the motor just gradually slow down, unlike the cordless Metabo, but no issue, of course. Okay, I've got the depth backed off down to 1/4 inch again. I've got the bit set out near the edge here, and we're going to try to route a groove in this red oak. Okay, not really a problem at all. I was kind of tipped at the edge here, so that was me. But once I got into the groove, it was actually pretty good. No burning here, nice and smooth. So we're going to try to increase this to 1/2 inch. We're going to try a 1/2 inch deep by 3/4 inch wide dado in this oak. This should be a pretty good test of this router's power. All right, so you could hear it was really giving that motor a run for its money, but you know, after I got past the tippy edge part here and I got it in a consistent depth, it's a very smooth cut. I mean, I have no issues with the quality of the cut here. In fact, let me bring the camera in and I will give you a closer look at how the cuts are going. So here's a look at the quality of the cut. Nice and clean. Now that's largely a function of the bit, but no burning. Very nice. This is where I was tipping the router at the beginning of the cut, but you can see that's a deep cut in red oak. So that's probably, I mean, that's pushing it a little bit. You probably don't want to push it too much further than that, but pretty solid performance from this cordless router. Let's hook the AC adapter up and just see how it does. This is all going to be pretty subjective because it's just my judgment of how it bogs down and stuff, but let's get that cord going and see how it goes. So we've got the AC adapter hooked onto this thing. That's one thing I love about these Metabo 36 volt tools is that there's even an AC adapter option. The only other thing I've really seen is I think DeWalt has a flex volt 120 volt adapter, but that's a very specific application. It's not like they have it for their 20 volt tools or their 60 volt tools. So that's kind of nice. So let's see if it makes any difference, good or bad, with the AC adapter attached. Again, we're going to do our 1/2 inch depth cut in this red oak. All right, I didn't notice a particular difference. The quality of the cut is just as good. But again, it's just nice to have this as an option. So, you know, I wouldn't know how to qualitatively or quantitatively measure the difference. But guys, this is a beast of a router for a cordless router. Just absolutely great. 3/4 inch straight bit in the Bosch. We're set at a 1/2 inch depth. We are at full speed. Let's see how it goes in our red oak, the other end of the same board as we did before. So the Bosch made a nice clean cut, but I feel like it struggled a little more than the Metabo HPT. I'll go back and look at the footage, but I feel like I had a little bit more trouble getting this one through the cut. Maybe I was moving a little faster. Again, we'll compare the video, but regardless, you know, that Metabo HPT is strong. This is a good router as well, but the fact that I'm sitting here contemplating whether this one was harder or not just tells you that they were at least close. So I realized my camera wasn't on when I just made that last cut. So I've got the 1/4 inch by 1.5 inch upcut spiral bit in the tool. I've switched over to the 1/4 inch chuck, and the maximum RPM rating for this bit is 35,000. So our tool is well within that. I've got 1/2 inch plywood here, and we're just going to see what it can do. I'm going to kind of go in a few different directions to go with the grain, against the grain, and just freehand it here. Very smooth, very easy. Actually, a pretty good quality cut. Not a lot of tear out here for an upcut bit. I don't know if that's attributable to the router or not. Again, I'm not that experienced of a woodworker, but for an upcut spiral bit, that looks very clean to me. We've got some scrap 1x12. I actually tried to do this and realized the bit wasn't set deep enough, so we're going to try this again. But let's see how it goes. No issues whatsoever. And you know, again, as I clean this off, there's really not that much tear out. Pretty cool. Really nice results with this Metabo HPT. Okay, so we've got our spiral upcut bit still in here. We're down to our red oak from the last test with the dado bit, and we're going to see what happens here. Very nice cut, no problem. Got the spiral upcut bit moved over to the Bosch. I've got the Bosch moved into its plunge base. So let's see how it does with the red oak. Okay, so it did it. It didn't seem to like it nearly as much as the Metabo. So, you know, again, I really hesitate to make bold statements about either of these routers as an inexperienced woodworker, but it sure seems to me like that Metabo is got a little more power than this corded Bosch, which is not at all what I expected. All right, well, I'll tell you what, this Metabo HPT cordless router did not fail to impress, at least impress me. I'm sure you guys saw some amateur mistakes in there. Again, I'm not a professional woodworker. I'm not very good at it. You saw some cuts on the board that weren't on camera. That's because I made mistakes, had to try again. But nonetheless, in my opinion, this is at least equal in power to the Bosch. And I felt like this one might have either had a little more power or was just easier to maneuver. You know, and somebody with a little more experience under their belt might have better insight on that. But definitely an excellent router. You know, after all the activity we put it through, it still has 3 bars of battery on it, and we went through oak. Like I said, there were 1 or 2 cuts off camera that didn't make it in. So hey, if you found any value in this whatsoever, please hit that like button. It really helps the YouTube algorithm put my videos out to more people so they can see it too. If you don't hit that like button, then YouTube relegates it to a dark corner of the video universe or something like that. But I really appreciate you guys watching and your support. My name is Jim with Philly Fixed. God bless.
Hello, I'm Jim Davis.